The night of the debate came, and the hall was filled with excited people. Everyone could sense the tension in the air, and they understood that this was not a typical conversation. What will happen when two brilliant minds come together? They spoke to each other in hushed tones. The debate began when Peterson asked the question that had been troubling him for some time. Peterson started, his voice steady but his eyes piercing. Elon, what do you think about God? Have you ever considered the possibility that Christianity holds the truth about life, about purpose? The room became quiet. Musk, who is always cool and composed, appeared to pause for a second. Will he know the answer? Everyone was curious. Musk, who was always prepared to take on a challenge, grinned a little and said, I believe in things that can be proven, Jordan. I respect people's beliefs, but I follow reason and logic. The first hook had been put in place. What would happen after that? Peterson leaned forward and kept his eyes on Musk as the debate went on. But does reason give us a sense of purpose, he asked. The question was heavy for the audience. This was not a matter of science or technology. It was a matter of life itself. Phelps is aware of all Musk's accomplishments, but did he ever take a moment to consider the more profound questions, such as those about faith and the meaning of life? Peterson took a brief break before continuing. Elon, you've made a lot of changes to the world, but I have to ask, with everything you've accomplished, do you ever wonder if there's more? Is there something beyond this life, something that lasts forever? The question hung in the air. Musk moved around in his seat. Has he ever considered this in the past? The crowd believed. Musk finally responded, saying, I think life is about improving the world and doing things that matter. I don't know if there's anything beyond this, but I believe in leaving something better behind. Peterson nodded in agreement with Musk's perspective, but he still had more to say. But Elon, where does that feeling of doing good come from? Who determines what is good and what is bad? Is science alone able to provide us with those answers? Musk's swag stopped once more. What we say next, everyone in the room was silent, anticipating Musk's reply. Musk finally responded in a calm voice, saying, I think we decide what's good based on what benefits people, what moves society forward. But Bagger, Peterson was quick to respond. Who makes that decision? The audience was captivated and could not tear their eyes away. The argument had become more serious, and everyone was curious to see how Musk would respond to this new threat. As the discussion went on, Peterson's query started to probe farther into Musk's ideas. He remarked, is it possible for science to explain everything? His voice was calm, but it had a probing quality. Peterson was known for his ability to ask questions that made even the sharpest people think twice, and tonight, he was putting that expertise to good use. Peterson continued again, saying, Elon, you have accomplished amazing things with technology, things that many people thought were impossible. But even with all of your success, can science explain the most important things in life? And explain love, sacrifice, and the human soul. Musk reclined and took a bit to reflect. Will he acknowledge that reasoning is not the only thing that matters in life? The audience was on the edge of their seats. Musk ultimately replied, I believe that science can explain a lot, but there are still some things that we do not completely understand. Perhaps we will one day. Peterson had a smile on his face, but is that enough? He questioned, the question lingering in the air like a cloud, is it possible for science to explain why we exist and what our purpose is, or is that something that can only be answered by faith? Musk did not reply immediately. The room became even more silent. What will he say next? The crowd seemed curious. At last, Musk said anything. I believe that people discover their own purpose. I'm not certain. There is one answer that applies to everyone. Peterson nodded but kept on pushing. But can we really trust our own judgment when it comes to something as significant as life itself? The crowd could sense that the tension was increasing. They were aware that something significant was on the way, but they were unsure of the timing or the nature of the event. The discussion was getting to a critical stage. Peterson had asked Musk questions that made him think, but now he was ready to confront Musk in a way that no one had ever done before. Peterson's voice was gentle, but his words were piercing. Is it possible for logic alone to bring about peace? He started by saying, Elon, you've talked about logic and reason, but have you ever felt the peace that comes from faith? This is the kind of peace that cannot be explained by science or technology. For a brief period, it appeared that Musk was unsure of how to reply when he looked at Peterson. Has he ever experienced tranquility in that manner? The crowd believed. Musk ultimately responded, I find peace in my work in doing things that matter. Peterson nodded, but he was not persuaded. But what happens when the work ends? Elon, what happens when we're left with just ourselves? Do you think science can bring us peace in those moments? Musk did not respond immediately. The atmosphere in the room was so tense that it was nearly intolerable. Is it possible for someone to achieve serenity without God? Peterson's inquiry was straightforward, yet it had a significance that everyone could sense. Esfand still had more to accomplish. He had one more question for Musk, a question that might change the course of the conversation. Oh, Peterson's voice was barely above a whisper as he said, "What is the meaning of life?" The audience was quiet as they waited for Musk to respond. Musk leaned back in his chair and pondered thoughtfully. Will you be able to answer this question? And the audience was curious. Musk eventually broke his silence after a long wait. I believe that the purpose of life is to create and to build something that will endure. That Peterson paid close attention, but is it sufficient? He asked, keeping his eyes on Musk. Isn't the meaning of life more profound than simply making things? Isn't it about forming a connection with something bigger than ourselves, something that lasts forever? Musk did not answer immediately. Everyone in the room waited for his response in silence. What will he say next? Chapter 6, the turning point. The room was filled with tension, and Peterson's comments hung heavily in the air. Is creating the only thing that matters? Peterson broke the silence with his voice as he asked. The audience was completely engaged. This was more than just a debate anymore. It was a confrontation of worldviews, a battle between reason and faith, science and the soul. Musk, always the thinker, leaned forward in his chair. He was deep in concentration, and his fingers tapped lightly on the table. The strain was mounting. What would his response be at this moment? The crowd was murmuring to one another, speculating whether Musk would change his position or continue to hold the same beliefs he had always held. Musk finally spoke up. I'm not saying that creating is everything, but it is what motivates me, he said. It is what gives my life meaning. I'm not sure if there's something better out there, but I concentrate to improve the world. Peterson was paying close attention, his eyes glued to Musk's face. He understood that this moment was critical. The conversation had been heated, but Peterson was now beginning to feel that Musk's shields were starting to weaken. Peterson wondered whether this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Could it be that Musk was beginning to think that there was more to life than simply creating? Peterson's voice softened as he said, "Elon, I respect your desire to make the world a better place. It is a noble goal. Yeah, however, I would like to ask you this. How do you know what is actually better? Without God, how do you know what is right? What is your method for distinguishing between good and evil?" Musk's expression changed a little bit. It was as if Peterson's remarks had struck a chord with him. The crowd wondered what he was thinking at that moment. Musk did not react right away for the first time during the argument. He looked down as if he were struggling with his ideas. Peterson continued, his voice becoming increasingly impassioned. You see, Elon, without God, without faith, and without a moral compass that is given to you by something greater than ourselves, what is the best way to deal with the difficulties of life? How can we comprehend the concepts of true kindness, forgiveness, and the worth of human life? The silence was overwhelming. Would Musk be able to justify his beliefs any longer? The audience was breathless as they waited for Musk to respond. At long last, Musk lifted his head and looked Peterson in the eye. He said in a voice that was softer than it had been before, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I've always depended on logic to guide me, but you are correct. I have never truly considered morality in the way that you are explaining it. The audience murmured, is it possible that Musk's way of thinking has changed? They were stunned. They had never thought they would hear Musk express uncertainty. That moment was quite impactful. Musk, who had always appeared to be confident in himself, was suddenly doubting his own grasp of life. Peterson noticed that a fracture had formed, and it was now time to apply a little more pressure. He leaned closer and spoke in a soft but assertive tone. Elon, I think that we can achieve serenity when we fully comprehend our role in this world and accept the reality of God and his instructions. We can discover a purpose that extends beyond our work, and the things we create. Musk appeared to be deep in contemplation for a short period of time. The room remained quiet as both of them waited for the next thing to be said. The audience was curious whether Musk would change his opinion now. Musk's voice interrupted the stillness. I have always thought that it is important to do good, assist others, and make society better. However, you are causing me to ponder. Perhaps I have been too focused on doing and not enough on being. The audience was shocked. Represents it possible that this represents a breakthrough? The last chapter of the argument had come, and there was a feeling that something significant was going to take place. Peterson was aware of the change in Musk's way of thinking. As Peterson got ready to ask his last question, the one that would make a lasting impact, he wondered if this was the moment of truth. Peterson started, Elon, with a voice that was both calm and strong. You've spoken about doing good and generating change. However, have you ever considered the idea that in addition to all the good we attempt to accomplish, there is a purpose for each of us that is given to us by God? Musk stared at Peterson with wide eyes, as if he were suddenly looking at the world in a different way. What would he say at this moment? The crowd could tell that Musk was no longer simply defending his convictions. They could sense that something was shifting within him. Musk spoke slowly, almost as if he were talking to himself, and continued, I never really thought about it that way. I always focused on the tangible, the measurable. However, what you are stating is not the same. It is possible that there is something greater than all of us. Peterson smiled softly, and his eyes said that he understood. Elon, the reality is that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves. The work that we do, the love we offer, and the way we spend our lives are both important. However, they become more important when we realize that we are fulfilling a greater mission. We can experience a sense of calm that nothing else can provide when we understand that the Creator is leading us. This silence that came after was deep and meaningful. The audience wondered if this was the conclusion of the debate. However, it was not merely the conclusion of a dispute, it was the start of something far more profound. Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, his thoughts racing. He started to think for the first time that the world was more than just logic, creation, and progress. There had to be more to it than that. What would he do next? The audience was still waiting for Musk to speak. After what felt like a long time, Musk finally said, I think I need to explore this more. I don't have all the answers yet, but I want to learn more. I would like to find out whether what you are stating is accurate. The audience burst into cheers. This was the result that no one had anticipated. Peterson had done the unimaginable. He had challenged Musk in a way that no one else had ever attempted, and Musk had, for the first time, opened himself to the possibility of faith. As a result, the debate came to a close, not with a definitive victor, but with both men pondering something much bigger than themselves. This was only the beginning. The days that followed the debate were filled with excitement. The world had seen something that was out of the ordinary. Elon Musk, who is known for his logical, practical, and technology-focused way of thinking, left the stage questioning his own beliefs. Peterson, who had spent years discussing faith, truth, and God, had planted a seed in Musk's heart that could possibly change his life forever. But what would Musk do with this new realization? For a few days, Musk kept to himself. What was going through his mind? Everyone was asking. The press was buzzing, speculating on whether Musk would change his views, whether he embraced God, or whether it was just another moment of fleeting doubt. But in truth, Musk was lost in deep thought, reflecting on the questions Peterson had posed to him. He sat alone in his study, staring out the window. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting ideas. Was there more to life than just achieving, creating, and innovating? He had never thought about that question before. He had always believed that the purpose of life was to create things, to leave a mark, and to change the world. But now, he was not so sure. Musk started reading books on philosophy, theology, and even the works of well-known religious thinkers. Would he come to believe in God? The thought echoed in his mind louder than ever before. He searched for answers, wanting to know if there was more to the world than what he had built with his own hands. As he read, Musk began to feel a pull, a yearning for something deeper, something more meaningful than anything he had ever created. Is it possible that God exists? This question kept coming back to him, louder than any other thought he had. In the silence of his study, he felt the weight of that question. It was a quiet evening when Musk finally decided to reach out to someone who could help him understand more. He knew that Peterson, a man who had lived his life with unwavering faith, might be the one who could offer him the guidance he needed. Musk sent a message to Peterson asking if they could meet again. Peterson had been anticipating this moment and agreed right away. The meeting was scheduled. What would happen next? The world was still waiting, hoping for some kind of revelation. Would Musk finally commit to a faith, or would he dismiss everything Peterson had taught him? When they sat down in Peterson's office, the tension was palpable. Musk looked at Peterson, his eyes filled with curiosity and uncertainty. Is this the moment that changes everything? Peterson could see the change in Musk. He was no longer the same man who had entered the debate. There was a shift in his demeanor, a softness, a vulnerability. Musk began by saying, Jordan, and his voice had a quality that was a combination of anxiety and hope. I've been thinking about everything we talked about. I keep wondering if there's more to life than what I've been doing. But how can I be sure that God exists? How can I have faith in something that I cannot see? Peterson stared at him with empathy. He had seen this struggle before in others, but this time it felt personal. Elon, Peterson continued, his voice soothing and encouraging. Faith is not about having all the answers. It is about having faith in something that is bigger than you. It has to do with giving into a greater purpose, one that is beyond what you can comprehend. You must pay close attention, his eyes fixed on Peterson. But what if I'm wrong? What if everything is simply a story? What if I have spent my whole life pursuing something that doesn't actually exist? Peterson took a moment to consider before saying anything. Elon, religion is not about being sure of something. It involves being open to new experiences and the potential for something better. It is about having faith that God has a purpose for you, even if you do not comprehend it at the moment. Musk leaned back in his chair, lost in meditation. Peterson's words weighed heavily on his heart, and for the first time, Musk felt the stirrings of something profound. Could he really believe? The thought lingered like a quiet whisper, asking him to take a leap of faith. As time went on, Musk's internal struggle persisted. He began to pray quietly in the privacy of his own home. It wasn't an elaborate prayer, nor did he fully understand what he was doing. But there was a small part of him that believed, just a little, that God might be listening. One Sunday, Musk found himself sitting quietly in a pew at church. The sermon was about faith, redemption, and the love of God. Is this the moment he gives up? Musk's heart raced. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strong connection to the words being spoken. Something inside him changed. After the service, Musk stepped outside into the cold, crisp air, feeling different. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted, but there was still a sense of uncertainty. What would he do next? That question lingered in the air that night as Musk sat alone in his office. He closed his eyes and whispered a simple, honest prayer: God, if you are real, show me the way. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to trust. It was a small prayer, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, Musk's life began to change in subtle ways. He started to approach his work with a new perspective, no longer focusing solely on what he could create, but on the impact his work could have on others. Was this the beginning of a new Elon Musk? The man who had once been consumed by progress was now seeking something more. He contacted Peterson again, but this time he asked a new question. Jordan, I've been praying, but I'm still not sure. How can I tell if God is leading me? Peterson smiled kindly, his eyes full of compassion. Elon, the journey of faith is not about assurance, it's about trust. The more you look for something, the more you will discover. Keep your heart open, and God will show you the way. Musk nodded slowly, realizing that this was the solution he had been looking for. Months later, Musk stood on a stage addressing an audience of thousands. However, this time his speech was not about technology or progress. Instead, he spoke about faith, purpose, and the journey he had been on. Could this be the final turning point? He shared his story of doubt, of struggle, and of how a simple conversation with Jordan Peterson had changed the course of his life. I've spent my life building things, Musk said, but now I realize that what matters most is building a connection with something greater than myself. E.D. Proud was silent, moved by his words. Could this be a moment of redemption? Musk had found his faith, and while the journey was far from over, he knew that this was just the beginning of something much greater than anything he had ever created. The world had witnessed a change. Will Elon Musk continue on this path? Only time would tell, but for now, he had taken the first step towards something truly transformative. The world had witnessed a change. Will Elon Musk continue on this path? Only time will tell, but for now, he had taken the first step towards something truly transformative, a journey of faith, purpose, and deeper understanding. Thank you so much for watching this video and for joining me on this thought-provoking journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring and fascinating tales, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for even better and more captivating stories coming your way. See you in the next video.